cheating wife in ICU said. Tom is Sophie's real father. My phone was recording everything. The first sound wasn't the phone. It was the shatter of glass downstairs. I jolted upright in bed, heart punching against my ribs. For a moment, I thought I'd been dreaming, but then came the muffled voices, one panicked, one harsh, the scrape of metal against tile. A clock glowed on the nightstand, 2:47 a.m. Too late for visitors. Too late for anything but trouble. Beside me, Dana lay motionless, turned to the wall. Her breath was steady, even, almost rehearsed. I whispered her name. She didn't stir. The phone rang then, splitting the silence with a shrill tone that made the hair on my arms stand up. I snatched it before it woke the whole house. Dad? Sophie's voice cracked through the receiver, thin and frantic. Please don't hang up. We're in trouble. I was already on my feet, pulling jeans over bare legs, adrenaline drowning out fatigue. Where are you? The quarry, Route 9. Mom, Her words collapsed into sobs. There was an accident. She's hurt. Please just come. The line went dead. I didn't even stop to lace my boots. The truck roared to life, tires spitting gravel as I tore down the road. The night pressed close on either side, pine trees flashing like ghosts in the high beams. My mind clawed for sense. Dana was supposed to be working late at her firm again. Third night this week. What the hell was she doing near the quarry with Sophie in the car? The answer waited in a chaos of flashing red and blue. Patrol cars formed a crooked perimeter, their lights painting the asphalt in pulsing waves. An ambulance squatted open-mouthed, attendants bent over a stretcher. Smoke curled from a sedan wrapped around a telephone pole, the hood folded like paper. I spotted Sophie first. She sat hunched in the back of a cruiser, a wool blanket clutched tight around her shoulders. Blood traced a line down her temple. The moment her eyes found mine, she bolted forward, colliding with my chest like a child half her age. Dad! She shook against me. Her hair smelled of smoke and something sour, fear, sweat, maybe liquor. I held her tighter than I had in years. It's okay. I'm here. A voice cut in. Firm, official. Sir, you can't. I turned, meeting the young officer's outstretched hand with a look that stopped him cold. That's my daughter. The officer hesitated, then stepped aside. That's when I saw her. Dana. She was being lifted into the ambulance, her body a ruin of bruises and crimson streaks, blonde hair matted dark. For a heartbeat, I couldn't connect the woman on the stretcher with the sharp-tongued wife who'd fallen asleep beside me countless nights. She looked fragile, breakable, almost innocent. Is she? My voice cracked. She's alive, said a familiar voice. Detective Linda Grady stood at my elbow, clipboard in hand. She looked older than the girl I remembered from high school, lines etched deep by too many midnights like this. Her tone was steady, but her eyes carried something heavier. It was bad, she said. Pole took the hit straight on. Passenger 2. Male, mid-30s. My gut tightened. Passenger? Name's Calvin Ames. You don't want his rap sheet. Linda closed the file in her hands. We're still piecing it together, but your daughter's seatbelt saved her. Without it, I didn't let her finish. I bent, cupping Sophie's face. You're safe. That's what matters. She shook her head violently, eyes brimming. No, Dad. You don't understand. Mom, she wasn't. The words choked off. I wanted to press, to demand answers, but the paramedics were already slamming the ambulance doors shut. Sirens wailed, fading into the night. Linda touched my shoulder gently. They're taking her to St. Mary's Trauma Ward. You should go. I looked back at the wreck, steam ghosting into the sky, twisted metal still dripping rainwater and gasoline. Something inside me whispered that this was more than an accident. This was the fracture line of everything I thought I knew. I kissed Sophie's forehead. Get in the truck. We're going to the hospital. But as we pulled away, she whispered something so faint I almost didn't catch it. Dad, there's more. So much more. And just like that, the night turned colder than death. The fluorescent lights at St. Mary's buzzed like angry wasps. I sat stiff in a plastic chair, Sophie curled against my side, her blanket still wrapped tight around her shoulders. Every time the doors to the trauma ward swung open, I half expected a doctor to emerge with the verdict that would either damn or spare what was left of my marriage. But no one came. Instead, the waiting room swallowed us whole, its humming vending machines, its stale coffee, its too clean smell that couldn't mask the stench of fear. Sophie hadn't spoken since the truck ride, not really. Just sat there, eyes locked on her knees, twisting the blanket between her fists until the fabric bunched like rope. Finally, I broke the silence. Tell me. Her head snapped up. What? You said there was more. My voice came out harder than I meant. Softer, I added. Please, sophomore, don't make me sit here blind. She swallowed, her throat bobbing, and for a moment I thought she'd shut down completely. But then, like a dam giving way, the words tumbled out. Mom's been lying to you. For years. The air left my lungs. Lying how? Her eyes welled. The man in the car, Calvin? He's not the first. Not even close. I've seen others. Different faces. Different nights. I used to tell myself they were clients, friends, anything but what they really were. But I knew. I've known since I was 16. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline that never came. She twisted the blanket tighter. I wanted to tell you. God, I wanted to. But every time I tried, she'd catch me. She'd say it was just work. Or that you already knew. And part of me believed her. Because you never asked questions, Dad. You never looked at her phone, never saw what I saw. A lump swelled in my throat. You thought I knew? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought you were pretending. Like that's just what married people did, keep secrets to keep the house from falling apart. And then when I realized you didn't know, I didn't know how to break it without shattering everything. Her voice cracked on that last word, and suddenly I wasn't angry at her. I was angry at myself. Angry at the years I'd buried in overtime, at the blind trust I'd worn like armor. I pulled her close, kissing the top of her smoke-scented hair. This isn't your fault. None of it. Before either of us could say more, the doors swung open. A doctor in green scrubs approached, his face unreadable. Mr. Halverson? I stood so quickly the chair clattered behind me. That's me. Your wife survived surgery. She's stable, but in a medically induced coma. Head trauma, internal bleeding. We'll know more in the next 48 hours. Coma. The words sank like lead. When will she wake up? Could be days. Could be weeks. Brain injuries are unpredictable. He adjusted his glasses, tone brisk. She's in ICU. You'll be able to see her shortly, but only briefly. I nodded, though my body felt like stone. As he walked away, Sophie whispered, Maybe it's better this way. The words chilled me. Don't say that. But the truth was already curling around my mind. Better this way, better she was silent, because silence meant no more lies. Before I could unpack that thought, a shadow fell across us. Linda Grady again, detective's badge clipped to her hip. She traded the clipboard for a manila folder she held like it might bite. Jack, can we talk? Her eyes flicked towards Sophie. I bristled. Say it here. Linda hesitated, then opened the folder. We ran Ames's record. 3 priors for assault. 2 for possession. 18 months served on an armed robbery. He's bad news. But the part that concerns you. She slid a photo free. Is this? The picture showed Dana and Ames at Murphy's bar, sitting close in a shadowed booth. Her hand rested on his arm. His grin was wide, predatory. They've been seen together. Regularly. Twice a week for months, according to staff. Sophie flinched like she'd been struck. I took the photo, staring at the evidence of what I'd refused to see. My wife, my partner of 22 years, smiling like she'd found a secret life worth more than the one we built together. Linda lowered her voice. Jack, this doesn't look like an accident. Not entirely. We found substances in his jacket. And a gun in the glove box. With his record, he shouldn't even be near either. A gun. Drugs? Dana's smile in the photo. The ground tilted beneath me. I heard Sophie whisper, barely audible. Dad, there's still more I haven't told you. Her eyes locked on mine, haunted. And in them, I saw a truth even uglier than the wreckage at the quarry. Sophie's whisper lingered in the sterile air like smoke. There's still more I haven't told you. I braced myself, heart pounding harder than it had at the crash site. What more, Soph? My voice came out low, tight. She hesitated, her fingers gnawing the blanket like she was trying to strangle it. Uncle Tom knows. He's known about Mom, about everything. The words hung heavy, impossible. My younger brother, the golden boy of the family, the man who always seemed to have it all together, he knew. What do you mean he knows? I heard them. Last Christmas. In the kitchen. Mom was laughing about you asking questions, and Uncle Tom told her to be more careful. He said you were too trusting to figure it out. And then, Sophie's voice faltered, dropped to a whisper. He said maybe it was time to tell you the truth. The truth about what? I don't know. Her eyes shone with panic. They stopped talking when they saw me. I staggered back a step, as if her words had landed like a physical blow. The waiting room felt smaller, airtighter. Linda shifted uncomfortably, like she didn't want to intrude, but she stayed rooted in place. Maybe she knew this wasn't just a family matter anymore. I sank into the chair, running both hands over my face. My brother had stood by me through college, through my wedding, through every major milestone. If he knew Dana was cheating, if he'd been complicit, then what had my entire life even been built on? Sophie touched my arm gently. Dad, there's something else. The words were softer this time, but heavier. I turned to her, already dreading the answer. Mom, she's been seeing other men for years. Not just Kelvin. There was Marcus, the contractor. David, the paralegal from her firm. I saw texts. Photos. I thought maybe they were harmless. But they weren't. I felt something hard, metallic, coil in my chest. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Tears spilled down her cheeks. Because I thought you knew. Because I thought. She broke off, choking on the words. I thought maybe you didn't care. Her confession gutted me more than anything else. That my daughter, my only child, believed I had chosen ignorance over dignity. That she'd carried this weight alone for years, trying to protect me. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as tight as I dared. I care, sophomore. More than anything. And I swear to you, this ends now. Before she could respond, Linda's radio crackled. She turned slightly away, murmured into it, then glanced back at me. Jack, there's something you should see. We followed her down the corridor, past closed patient rooms, until she stopped outside a small office. She pulled a folder from under her arm and set it on a desk. These came from your wife's purse. Receipts. Transfers. Withdrawals. Linda spread them out like a dealer laying cards. She's been moving money, large amounts, for months. Tens of thousands. I stared at the papers. Familiar signatures. My joint account. But the withdrawals weren't mine. She's been bailing Ames out. Covering his debts. Paying him. Linda's tone hardened. And maybe more than that. The numbers blurred before my eyes. Every late night, every unexplained expense, it was all here, documented in black and white. Dana had hollowed out our life from the inside, bleeding it dry. Sophie's hand trembled as she touched one receipt. That's from the day she told me she was going shopping with you. Her voice cracked. But you were at work. My pulse roared in my ears. My marriage, my finances, my family, it was all lies. And at the center of it, my brother lurking in the shadows. I slammed the folder shut, the sound echoing too loud in the sterile hall. No more. Sophie looked at me, wide-eyed. What do you mean? I forced myself to meet her gaze, to let her see the resolve taking root where grief had lived. I've spent 20 years blind. That ends tonight. No more secrets. No more waiting for the truth to drop like a bomb. We dig until we find it. Every last piece. For the first time since the call, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Relief, maybe even hope. Linda exhaled slowly. Then you'd better brace yourself. Because from where I'm standing, this looks bigger than just an affair. I didn't need her to spell it out. Deep down, I already knew. Dana hadn't just betrayed me. Tom hadn't just betrayed me. They had built something together, behind my back, brick by brick, year after year. And I was done being the fool. The waiting room no longer felt like a place of helplessness. It felt like the staging ground for war. St. Mary's ICU smelled like bleach and hopelessness. Machines hummed softly at Dana's bedside, their screens blinking like indifferent eyes. Tubes snaked from her arms, the steady beep of her heart monitor mocking the storm tearing through mine. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at her pale, bandaged face. For 22 years, this woman had been my anchor. And now I couldn't tell if she'd been my anchor or my anchor chain, dragging me under while smiling all the while. Dad? Sophie's voice pulled me back. She stood in the doorway, small in her oversized hoodie, eyes rimmed red. I forced myself to move, guiding her into the room. She won't wake tonight. You don't have to look at her like this. But Sophie didn't flinch. She stepped to the bed, staring at her mother with a mix of fury and heartbreak that broke me in ways I hadn't known were possible. She lied to us both, Sophie whispered. But to you most of all. Her hand trembled as she touched Dana's wrist, as if trying to confirm her mother was still flesh and blood, not some phantom. Dad, there's one more thing. I tensed. The last 3 times she'd said those words, my world had cracked wider. Sophie bit her lip, then forced it out. I don't think I'm yours. The words hit harder than any car crash. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard right. My throat went dry. What? I overheard her. Years ago. She was arguing with Uncle Tom. She said you were too trusting, too blind, and that you'd never notice. That he should keep quiet, because you'd raise me like your own anyway. Silence stretched long enough for the machines to fill it. I staggered back, gripping the chair for balance. My own brother? The thought coiled around my ribs like barbed wire. You're saying... I couldn't finish. Her eyes welled with fresh tears. I don't know for sure. But I see it every time she looks at him. Every time he looks at me. Like they share something I don't understand. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to breathe, but the air was heavy, poisonous. Memories replayed, Christmas dinners, family photos, Tom's overprotective smile whenever Sophie walked in the room. Suddenly, every moment bent out of shape, every glance carried a hidden meaning. I wanted to deny it, to tell Sophie she was imagining things. But deep down, I already knew. The door creaked, and Linda stepped in, holding another folder. She hesitated, reading the room. Bad time? Just say it. I rasped. She handed me a manila envelope. This came from the contents of Dana's purse. She requested genetic tests 2 years ago. Confidential ones. I tore the flap open. Inside, a single sheet, words clinical and merciless, probability of paternity, 0%. The floor dropped out from under me. Sophie's breath caught. So it's true. My voice cracked. You're still my daughter. I gripped her shoulders, desperate for her to believe it. None of this changes that. 20 years sophomore. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee, I was there. Not him. Me. She collapsed against me, sobbing, and I held her like my life depended on it. Because maybe it did. Linda shifted, her expression heavy. Jack, this doesn't just end with infidelity. There's money hidden, insurance policies, records you don't want to see. It's bigger than personal betrayal. It looks like conspiracy. The word made my skin crawl. Behind me, Dana stirred faintly, a twitch of fingers, a flutter of eyelids. Sophie's grip tightened. She's waking up. The machines beeped faster, her body fighting through sedation. And suddenly I knew, this wasn't the end of answers. This was the beginning of the ugliest truth yet. Because when Dana opened her eyes, there'd be no more denials. Only war. The heart monitor quickened as Dana's eyelids fluttered. A groan escaped her lips, raspy and faint, like the sound of someone dragging chains across stone. Sophie stiffened beside me, her grip on my arm vice-tight. She's waking up. I leaned forward, every muscle taut. Part of me wanted to walk out of that room and never hear her voice again. Another part burned for answers, for the truth that had poisoned 22 years of my life. Her eyes opened slowly, hazy blue irises flicking between us. When they landed on Sophie, they softened, a tremor of relief breaking through. "Baby," she whispered. "You're safe." Sophie's jaw clenched. She didn't answer. Then Dana's gaze slid to me. Her expression shifted, fear, calculation, then something dangerously close to defiance. "Jack! You stayed." I pulled the envelope from my jacket and dropped it on the tray table. The single sheet slid free, damning in sterile black ink. "Probability of paternity, 0%. "Tell me the truth," I said, my voice low, steady. "All of it." No more games. For a long moment, she stared at the paper, lips pressed tight. Then she gave a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, more like a broken cough. "You finally figured it out." Sophie flinched, tears brimming. "So it's true. Uncle Tom." Dana cut her off, sharp as a blade. "Yes. Tom. He's her father. He's always been her father." The words weren't a confession, they were a weapon. Sophie reeled back, shaking her head as if she could fling the truth away. I caught her before she crumpled. "You let me raise her," I said, my voice cracking. "You let me love her like she was mine, while you laughed behind my back." Dana's lips curved, not quite a smile. "You were useful, Jack. You worked. You paid. You kept the roof over her head. Tom couldn't risk his career, his reputation. You were the perfect cover." Rage surged hot and uncontrollable. I slammed my fist against the tray, rattling the machines. "A cover? I gave you my life." The monitor spiked. Dana didn't even flinch. Sophie stepped forward, trembling but fierce. "And what about me? Did you ever think about what this would do to me?" Dana's face softened for a flicker, then hardened again. "You're better off this way. Tom's brilliant, successful. He could give you everything Jack never could." Her words were acid, corroding every memory we'd ever shared. I pulled my phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over the record button. Then I realized I'd already pressed it. Her every word had been captured, seared into digital permanence. "Say it," I demanded. "Say it all. Say you used me. Say you lied. Say you and Tom planned to be together while I—" Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're clever. But you don't know the half of it." She leaned forward slightly, voice dropping to a hiss. "The life insurance policy you found? That wasn't my idea. That was Tom's. He's tired of waiting. Tired of pretending. He wanted you gone. Said accidents happen every day." The room tilted. My brother, my own blood, had been planning my death. Sophie gasped, a sound so raw it scraped the air. "You were going to kill Dad?" Dana's mask slipped for the first time. A crack. A flicker of something close to shame. Then it was gone. "We were planning for contingencies." I felt the last thread inside me snap. "You're done, Dana," I said quietly. "Everything you've built, every lie you've spun, it ends tonight." She smirked faintly, though her hands trembled against the sheets. "And who's going to believe you? A grieving husband with a vendetta? My word against yours." I lifted the phone, screen glowing with the red timer. The recording stretched back nearly 20 minutes. Her words, her venom, all immortalized. The color drained from her face. Sophie exhaled, shaky, but for the first time in years, her shoulders straightened. She stepped closer, her voice steady. "You always said I'd thank you someday. Well, here it is, thank you. For showing me exactly who I'll never become. The machines beeped faster. Dana's eyes darted between us, fury and fear colliding. I pocketed the phone, my voice calm now, stripped of every illusion. You've lost, Dana? Not because of me. Not even because of the law. You've lost because the only people who ever loved you don't anymore. Silence filled the room. Heavy, final. Then I turned to Sophie, offering my hand. Come on. We're done here. She slipped her fingers into mine. Together we walked out, leaving Dana tethered to her machines, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. The recording did the work I couldn't. Within a week, the district attorney's office had it in their possession, along with the receipts, the transfers, the hidden account statements. Dana's hospital bed became her holding cell. Tom's office became the stage for his humiliation. Both wore masks of denial, but the evidence cut through every excuse. For once, the lies weren't mine to swallow. Sophie and I watched the town absorb the scandal the way small towns always do, hungrily, with whispers that traveled faster than newsprint. Dana, the respected lawyer, reduced to a headline: conspiracy, fraud, adultery. Tom, the golden boy, toppled from his pedestal, his name smeared across the front page like mud on marble. And me? I was left standing in the quiet wreckage of what they built on my back. The nights were the hardest. After the adrenaline faded, the house felt cavernous, haunted by echoes of laughter that had never been real. I'd catch myself staring at the empty side of the bed, wondering if I'd ever truly known the woman who once lay there. Or if she'd always been a stranger, wearing a mask I was too blind to question. One evening, Sophie found me in the garage, sitting on an old stool with a beer gone warm in my hand. You're not sleeping, she said. Neither was she. Her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, but steadier than I'd seen in years. She'd grown stronger in the fire. Sleep feels like surrender, I admitted. Like if I close my eyes, they'll win somehow. She sat across from me, pulling her knees to her chest. They already lost, Dad. You don't have to keep fighting shadows. Her words sank deep, truer than anything I'd heard in months. We built new routines, quiet ones. Dinners for 2 instead of 3. Walks in the evening when the air smelled of pine and wood smoke. She told me she wanted to study psychology, to help other families untangle themselves from the knots of silence and secrets. I told her she'd be brilliant at it. Every step forward felt small, but it was ours. The trials came quickly. Dana, convicted of fraud and conspiracy, sentenced to more years than her carefully curated reputation could withstand. Tom, disbarred, convicted, left to rot in the shadow of the empire he'd once flaunted. Neither looked at me in the courtroom. Neither dared. I didn't need their apologies. The real reckoning had already happened, in that sterile ICU room, when Sophie slipped her hand into mine and chose me, not by blood but by bond. Because here's the truth, I didn't lose a daughter. I gained the only family that mattered. On the night the verdict came down, Sophie and I sat on the porch, spaghetti bowls in our laps, the sky burning orange as the sun bled into the horizon. For once, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was alive, filled with the hum of crickets and the quiet beat of survival. She set her bowl down, brushing her hair back. Do you think they'll ever forgive us? I shook my head. Forgive us? They did this to themselves. She studied me for a long moment, then leaned her head on my shoulder. Good. Because I don't want forgiveness. I want peace. Peace. A word I hadn't dared to believe in. Yet sitting there with her, the air cool against my skin, I realized I had it already. Not the peace of forgetting, some wounds don't close. But the peace of knowing the truth, of no longer living inside someone else's lie. When we finally went inside, Sophie paused at the doorway, turning to me. You're still my dad, you know. No test can take that away. I swallowed hard, my chest thick with a mix of grief and gratitude. And you're still my daughter. Always. The door shut softly behind us, the night folding in around the house. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Because tomorrow was ours.